Here's everything you need to know about the Spot from across the Spider-Verse. This is Nerdist Now. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse hits theaters this weekend, and we're very excited to watch Miles, Gwen, Peter B. Parker, and literally every other Spider-Person back up on the screen. Okay, so not every Spider-Person.
Is that all you got? You're gonna fight or you're just bumping gums, you hard-boiled turtle slapper?
And we will eventually do a whole video going through the literally hundreds of Spider people in this movie, but today we're focusing on the villain of Across the Spider-Verse, the Spot. If you want to read our full review of the movie, Joshua Mackey has you covered over on Nerdist.com. Now, to talk about the man made of a million tiny holes, we're going to be talking about comics and, of course, Into the Spider-Verse. So if you haven't seen that movie by now, what are you doing? It won an Oscar. The villain known as the Spot was created by Al Milgrom and Herb Trimpe. He first appeared in Spot form in Peter Parker, The Spectacular Spider-Man number 98 in 1985. Jonathan Ohn, that's O-H-N-N, earned his doctorate at MIT, where he was roommates with Quentin Beck, aka Mysterio. And if you're acting like you wouldn't watch that TV show, you are kidding yourselves. Jonathan became a scientist in Kingpin's employ. The Big Fisk gave him the job of reproducing the radiation levels of the vigilante Cloak to find a way of artificially mimicking his powers. While working in his lab late one night, On's eyes beheld an eerie sight. He had succeeded in creating a solid black circular portal. In doing so, he also started to drain the city's power, causing a blackout to wash over New York City, thus leading the portal to shimmer and destabilize. He did the smartest thing possible and stepped into the chaotic void, but the shock of passing through the portal caused him to pass out. MIT's best and brightest, he awoke in a dimension which he assumed was Cloak's dark dimension, but soon realized that the power shortage caused the portal to send him to a different dimension, one made of half darkness and half light, like those cookies. He was surrounded by a seemingly infinite number of portals, but he managed to find his way through the portal that brought him there and slipped back through it. But when On flopped back into his lab, the portals from the dimension had adhered to his now bleached white skin, covering him with black spots from head to toe, like that Crash Test Dummies video that only we remember. The Spot's powers allow him to transport things or people to another area by way of passing through the spotted dimension and coming out in another place entirely. He can teleport himself or extend parts of his own body over various distances, and he has the ability to take his spots on and off and toss them somewhere else. And since the Spot's attacks come from a different dimension, Spider-Man's spidey sense can't detect them. Daredevil and his radar, on the other hand, have no problem. He can stretch himself too thin if he whips around too many spots, which causes him to become weak. He also appears to be immortal, but more on that in a minute. After his incident, he did what all scientists who experience a horrible accident do in comics. He turned to a life of crime.
Can't really get a job anywhere anymore being like this, so I've turned to a life of crime.
On made his grand debut in front of Spider-Man and Black Cat, declaring himself as the Spot, a name so powerful it caused Spider-Man to collapse to the ground with laughter, which was short-lived because Spider-Man ended up getting folded like laundry. He, like most villains, was eventually beaten by Spider-Man and would go on to have a weird career in the pages of Marvel Comics. Mr. Spot later formed the Spider-Man Revenge Squad. Can you guess what they do? They were a team composed of the villains Gibbon, Kangaroo, Grizzly, and of course the Spot. A real who's who of who the hell's that. This team fell apart after Spider-Man threw the Spot and the Kangaroo into jail for bank robbery. Cool, aim high, bud. The Spot was later captured by an organization called the Gideon Trust, who forced him to open a portal to the negative zone in an effort to exploit the natural resources of the zone. Precious negativium or something like that. The Spot also helped Tombstone escape from a maximum security prison. Tombstone thanked Spotty by snapping his neck after escaping. Despite being dead, Spot would pop back up only to be killed again, this time by Elektra, who declared, "Out, damn Spot." No, you're wrong. Hydra, the Hand, and the mutant cult Dawn of the White Light had a plot to end all life on Earth. They resurrected Spot to join them on an assault on the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, and as his thank you, he was killed again, this time by Wolverine. A note on the whole being killed a bunch thing, the Spot claims to possess some form of immortality. If the Spot is fatally wounded, he disintegrates and reconstitutes himself back in the spotted dimension. Let me ask you this question. Is that really immortality, or is it in fact the most mortality? After recovering from death, Spot had a run-in with the Mandarin, who used his black light ring to entrap Spot in his own anti-dimension. Since he hadn't entered it of his own volition, it became impossible for him to know which spot was the way out. which slowly drove him a little bit insane. Or kind of just more insane, I guess. For an MIT graduate, the Spot really gets mixed up in a lot of mafia turf wars. He's worked for Mr. Negative, Dr. Octopus, warring mafia families, Kingpin, and tried to take on the Russian mob over the shooting of his son. And as of last year, Old Spots did what he does best, dying a horrific death. In Carnage number 3 by Ram V and Roger Antonio, the Spot was attacked in his lab by Carnage, who wanted to take Spot's powers for itself. After a valiant effort, Carnage got the better of him and tore him into pieces. As for what the Spot has planned for Miles and a whole multiverse of Spider-Folk, that is yet to be seen. Unless you're watching this after you've watched the movie. But if you haven't yet, go get yourself a ticket. Get your butt in a theater and watch one of the best movies of the year. Maybe even the best movie of the year so far. I'm gonna put it above John Wick on my personal list. But tell us, what do you think? What villain do you want to see in Beyond the Spider-Verse? Who's your favorite spider being? And no, you can't pick Spider-Ham. Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching as always, and for the latest and greatest in the world of pop culture, make sure you stay tuned to Nerdist.com.